our new tone value functionalities. So if I select a multicolor file like this one, my 7-color indigo, and I want to do some editing, tone value editing, I can use my tone value tool here for this. And what we've changed here, we have the correction according to specific standards, like for example, the G7 gray balance standards. We have the support for ISO 2654. We had that as well in older versions. G7 is intended to work on the CMYK parts of a document. So as I'm having 7-color here, it would only, if I select G7 gray balance, it only do my correction on the CMYK parts and leave the orange, green, violet untouched. Or I could use G7 for the CMYK parts and use ISO 2654 for the additional multicolor parts. And the other way around is as well supported, and that's new in ColorAnt 5. That in a 7-color process here, we would apply the ISO 2654 only to the multicolor parts. And that means the CMYK parts wouldn't be touched with that functionality. Another thing which we have added is the protect slide slider here. This data is not critical, but let's have a look into some more critical data, for example, in Flexo printing. We'll load some label data from a Flexo printer here. And if I look into the TVI here, we see the typical high dot gain at the beginning, bump curve. And if you would apply G7 or ISO 2654 SCTV curves to it, it might lead to overcompensating those effects that we have here. And that's something that we don't want. We typically want to keep this behavior, which is the bump curve at the beginning, and do not want to compensate for that. And with the new protect slide slider, you can define, okay, I want my corrections only be done from 2% on, and I don't do any correction from 0 to 2%. So if I do this correction here, this will obviously change my data quite drastically. But what I want to show you is that we keep the characteristics here in the highlight area up to 2%, and then we will change the curves according to the tone value changes. One word of caution anyway, tone value corrections make only sense if you print according to those changes later on. So it makes no sense, like in my example here, where I had some data like this one, and I apply now a tone value correction and change my data, even if the data looks very nice now and very smooth. If my print doesn't work like this, then this is a bad correction, obviously. So I just want to keep that in mind, because sometimes people keep on asking when to use the tone value tool. And the main feature of the tone value tool is obviously, if I want to do some correction according to G7 and I do this correction already on my press and I have my test charts and I see, okay, I'm nearly there, but it's not perfect. And then I can use that tool to make the data perfect, G7 or ISO 2654, to make it behave exactly the way I want it to be without the deviations that I obviously have in my typical printing. So that's a nice functionality, and that's the reason why we have the tone value tool here.